This is a map of all the supervolcanoes on Earth, the ones capable of destroying entire continents if they erupted. And you might be surprised to see that most of these aren't actually in the typical places you'd expect, like Yellowstone National Park or Mount St. Helens. No, instead, they're hiding underneath the sea ice of the Arctic Ocean. And they may be waking up. You probably know about Yellowstone because it's one of the most famous supervolcanoes on Earth. But there are over 1,000 times as many underwater supervolcanoes. The thing is, we don't actually know how many there are since we haven't discovered them all yet. So I did some digging, and turns out we're living through an explosive time. A new eruption cycle may have just begun. And scientists believe this could be the start of something big. Like, what if a new ice age is coming soon? When Yellowstone erupts, it will literally blow the top off the planet. If it were to go off today, the explosion would generate so much heat, light and sound that you could hear it from nearly every corner of the globe. You might even see a bright flash in the sky from miles away. Then ash would begin raining down over the US, covering major cities like Seattle, Portland, Boise and Salt Lake City in several inches of volcanic debris. At the same time, hot lava would gush out of the sides of the volcano, traveling as far as 100 kilometers from the source, destroying everything in its path. Yellowstone is currently in a dormant period, which means it's not erupting right now, but it hasn't blown up in thousands of years. Instead, the ground beneath Yellowstone is quietly bubbling with magma. This is the molten rock deep inside the Earth that can eventually turn into lava when it reaches the surface. Magma chambers below Yellowstone are constantly refilling, and when they reach a critical point, the pressure from the gas inside will trigger an eruption. Eventually, one day, the pressure will become too much and it will explode, unleashing a massive amount of energy and sending ash and rock high into the atmosphere. Scientists believe it will happen again, but they don't know when. Some say it'll be another 1,000 years. Others say it could happen tomorrow. And because it sits right in the middle of 3 tectonic plates, its eruptions will affect not only North America, but the rest of the world as well. But compared to the supervolcanoes lurking beneath the Arctic Ocean, Yellowstone is a small fry. These underwater volcanoes are capable of causing global devastation, wiping out life as we know it. In fact, some scientists think that the current ice age we're in right now started after a massive volcanic eruption in the Arctic. So here's what you need to know. First of all, we're talking about some seriously large land masses here. We call a volcano a supervolcano if it has the potential to erupt more than 1,000 cubic kilometers of material. That's enough to bury the entirety of Texas under 12 meters of ash. To put this into perspective, Yellowstone's largest historic eruption at the La Garita caldera was around 5,000 cubic kilometers. Now, that's still a lot. But compared to the biggest Arctic supervolcanoes, it's peanuts. There are 2 in particular that scientists have been keeping an eye on lately, both of which are located near the geographic North Pole. The first is the 1,800-meter deep Cyrene volcanic complex, which researchers believe was the site of the largest eruption in Earth's history. Around 50 million years ago, this monster blew up, hurling 16,000 cubic kilometers of ash into the air, enough to cover the continental United States under 3 meters of pumice. This was the second largest eruption of all time, only beaten out by the Toba catastrophe in Indonesia. When it happened, it generated a plume that reached 45 kilometers into the sky. And if you thought Yellowstone was scary, just wait until you hear what happened next. The blast at Cyrene was so powerful that it created a giant caldera, a huge crater left over after a major eruption. Over millions of years, water filled it in, and now it's home to a whole ecosystem of phytoplankton, zooplankton, jellyfish, fish and whales. But just because it's underwater now doesn't mean that it's not dangerous. Every year, scientists monitor increased seismic activity at the bottom of the ocean floor, hinting at the possibility that the volcano could blow once again. Plus, it's not the only supervolcano hiding nearby. Just 70 kilometers away, another massive eruption occurred approximately 60 million years ago. This time, 2,400 cubic kilometers of ash was shot into the air, creating the second largest magma chamber ever seen on Earth. It's so big that scientists have nicknamed it the Big Ben event. It's currently buried under 1,500 meters of sediment, but it's so wide that it would take 17 of the United States lined up side by side to match its length. Right now it's quiet, but that doesn't mean it won't wake up again. In fact, according to recent studies, it may have done just that. Researchers analyzing the sediments near the volcano found charcoal fragments and pieces of burnt rock, indicating that it had recently become active again. They also detected an increase in seismic activity, making it clear that there's a lot of magma moving underneath the surface. With 38 small earthquakes recorded in the area within a single week, scientists have never seen anything like this before. Something strange is happening deep below the Arctic Ocean. And while the research team didn't directly observe the eruption, they believe that these signs are good evidence that it's just a matter of time before it blows. As climatologist Dale Walker from the University of Alaska Fairbanks explains, quote,
"We know that there's a magma chamber below the seafloor because of the earthquake data and other geophysical data. So it's a matter of when it erupts, not if."
But when exactly will it happen? There's no way to tell for sure, but based on the rate of sedimentation in the area, scientists estimate that the volcano has a reignition window of roughly 300 to 400 years. That means that if it does blow up any time soon, it'll probably be in the next few decades. But what happens if it does? Will the end of days finally arrive? The truth is that we don't really know what would happen if one of these underwater volcanoes erupts. The closest thing we have to an example is the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991. The second largest eruption of the 20th century sent 70 billion cubic meters of gas and ash into the atmosphere, affecting global weather patterns for years. Pinatubo shot ash 35 kilometers into the air, and hot flows destroyed 845 square kilometers of land, killing 700 people. But that was nothing compared to the Toba catastrophe in Indonesia, the largest volcanic eruption of the past 2 million years. An unimaginable amount of ash and gas was hurled 100 kilometers into the air. It was so massive that it led to a volcanic winter, blocking out the sun and plunging the planet into darkness for months. When the dust eventually settled, it caused the most extreme climate change event in human history, forcing our ancestors and other species to adapt or die. So if either of these Arctic volcanoes were to blow up, what would happen then? For starters, you wouldn't even notice it right away. Unlike the Krakatoa, Indonesia eruption, which generated a tsunami that killed over 40,000 people across 7 countries, the water temperature near the Arctic volcanoes is already freezing. So when the volcano erupts, it wouldn't cause a destructive wave to spread across the ocean. Instead, the main danger would be the ash. It would shoot hundreds of kilometers into the air, mixing with water vapor and creating giant ash clouds. And unlike the Toba eruption, which affected temperatures worldwide, the Arctic blast would only bring colder temperatures to places closer to the poles.
According to climatologist Brian John from the University of Aberdeen, the eruption would definitely cool the planet, but it wouldn't be catastrophic. He says, quote, "The impact on the climate is uncertain, but it seems unlikely that it would lead to an ice age."
It's true that Greenland saw a dramatic cooling of 1.5 degrees Celsius shortly after Mount Pinatubo erupted, but the effect was short-lived. On the other hand, scientists also found a link between volcanic eruptions and the beginning of ice ages. It's possible that the last ice age began after the Laka Sea eruption in Germany, and that the one before that started after the Toba catastrophe in Indonesia. And now we could be seeing the start of a new one. If the Arctic supervolcanoes do blow up, the global temperature could drop by as much as 1.5 degrees. While that may not sound like a lot, it could be enough to kickstart a new ice age. The problem is that we simply don't know enough about these volcanoes to say for sure. What we do know is that it's a sign that something big is happening deep inside the Earth. And in the coming years, we'll keep a close eye on the Arctic Ocean as it begins to boil. Now watch the Earth's core is getting bigger. Why? Or check out a real-life doomsday scenario. how a small frozen virus survived being buried under ice for 46,000 years.